Residence Life and Housing had some changes to announce. Students can now room with the opposite sex, Highlands 2 is designated as a freshman building, and the living learning floor options are updated. Director of Residence Life and Housing, Amy Franklin Kraft, spoke more about this.
I started here in August of this year, so I came in with our first year students, maybe about 2 days before them. I've been working in residence life and housing programs for the better part of 20 some odd years, most recently at Michigan State University. So I went from the very, very large to much more of what I consider a manageable and homey atmosphere. But I'd worked at State for 10 years, and I'm not native to Michigan. I'm actually native to Pennsylvania. I went to Westchester, as a matter of fact, for my undergraduate and my first graduate degree. But I saw the position had come open, and having worked at a number of institutional types, my personal preference is to work at smaller institutions. So it was a very attractive position in terms of what it would be asking me to do, and something that I was interested in doing, and certainly being in a smaller atmosphere, so it was very attractive. So I went through the application process, and here I am. When you work at a smaller institution, you are very much a jack of all trades. So working at Michigan State, my role was Associate Director just of Residence Life. So the work that I did was supervising the programmatic aspects of what was occurring in the hall, and certainly supervising the staff. That was very, very centralized to just those particular roles. I didn't deal with student conduct, I didn't deal with billing, I didn't deal with housing assignments. None of those things were a part of my responsibilities at State. Though I've had those responsibilities working at a smaller institution, for example, Edinboro University is a small private liberal arts school, about 2,000 on-campus enrollment, so not dissimilar to here. That was the role that I had prior to moving to State. So my job was much more specialized and focused when you're working at a school as large as Michigan State. Their total campus enrollment, or their total enrollment, is 60,000 students, and the campus enrollment was 17,000. So that's bigger than Edinboro, not university, definitely. Edinboro. So here, I manage every aspect of the housing program, from housing assignments and setting the direction for what our on-campus program will look like, to the residential aspect and the types of experiences our students have on campus. I also have a hand in the conduct issues that sometimes creep up. Students are making mistakes and making some choices that sometimes they learn they learn from, let's put it just that way. And so it's a lot of day-to-day different things that I'll have my fingers in. We've tried to make what's in some ways a complex process as seamless and easy for students to understand as possible. Last Friday, I sent out information to students, and there were differing emails that students received depending on the type of environment they currently lived in. Because we do have a few students who will be displaced or asked to move to a new location so that we can support some of our newer living learning communities. So information was sent to students explaining that they had options open to them and what to expect, the timelines, the advantages, and why they would want to live on campus. Yesterday afternoon, our housing coordinator, Kathy Grando, sent information to all students saying this is exactly how you do it. So it had a step-by-step attachment, Microsoft Word attachment, that students could open, and as they're choosing their housing assignment, it'll walk them through exactly what to do online and how to make the room selection that best suits their needs. The housing assignment process actually begins on Monday, which is March 2nd. And students who are able to secure the room that they currently have and would like to live in the same room next year will be able to do that at that time. And there will be some students, though, who are being asked to relocate because we have a new program going into Highlands 2 for first-year students specifically, and we have some other living learning programs that we want to ensure that the student populations in the programs really match or align with the majors that they're intended to serve, so that they're receiving the best educational experience that they can. So some students are being displaced, and we want to give them first crack at the remaining housing assignments. So they will be able to house themselves on Wednesday of next week. So those are students who are being relocated. And then on Friday of next week, any student that certainly is living on campus again next year, doesn't want to live in their same room, wants to experience something new, they'll have the opportunity to select any available room on campus. We've got lots to choose from. We have a number of students that sometimes in their junior year, sometimes in their senior year, they'll make the choice to go off campus. And certainly students will be graduating, so spaces open up, so there's lots of availability of every type of housing that we have. So I think we'll be able to suit our needs. We do have some deadlines associated with the process. Any student who would like to be in a residential community next year, a living learning community, we ask that they fill out a supplemental application explaining, who they are, name, major, those types of things, why they're interested in living in that community. For the most part, if the student's major aligns with the residential community, of course we're going to be housing them there. If it doesn't align, we'll consider why they might be interested in that community, and we'll do that in close partnership with the academic program that's housed. And for example, that I share with students, when I was an undergraduate student, I was a political science major. So part of my brain kind of operates like that. I'm very into politics. I enjoy it a lot. If I were here as a student, though, I think I would absolutely want to live in the art community because that's another part of my identity and what I enjoy. So I would probably ask to live in that community. And space permitting, we want to try to meet students' needs and make them happy. If they feel like they can contribute to a community that doesn't necessarily align with their major, we'll do everything we can to make that happen.
What about somebody who wants to be a roommate with someone of that major? How would the process go for that person?
Well, it's a fine balance between wanting to have a community in which all of the students are the particular major, and certainly balancing a student's social needs. So, if you and I, for example, wanted to live in the STEM community and I was a nursing major and you're a communications major, if I requested you as my roommate and you also filled out the application, we'll honor that request. We don't want to exclude somebody from having somebody that they really trust and care about live with them. So we'll make that happen. So our communities won't be 100%, art or 100% STEM or what have you. But we also want to be thoughtful as you're making the choice to move into that community, that a good portion of the programs will be geared towards the students in those majors and those types of things. And that's okay for some students.
So let's talk a little bit about the freshman dorm that we're going to have next year.
Yeah.
How is that going to be a benefit to those students?
Well, there's lots of research about what makes students academically successful, and we've spent a good portion of this year helping our residence life staff understand the things that we want them to focus on with students with regard to establishing study groups, obtaining feedback from professors, seeking out professors and their academic advisors so that they're on track. So a number of pieces that we hope will trickle down in terms of helping students recognize the academic benefits of college and what the residence life program can offer. There's also a lot of research out there that supports the notion of intentionally designed communities, such as living learning communities or first-year experience communities. The research on first-year experience communities is they can be very, very good when you have an intentionally designed program where you are able to have students who live in the hall and may be co-enrolled in university classes together, so that they can have that experience of going to class together, being able to study in the halls together, those types of things, really establish a tight-knit community. So they can be really, really good in terms of academic success. They can also, to be honest, be really, really bad. If you put a whole bunch of first-year students in a building with no guidance, no programmatic expectations, no sense for goals and goal development, you don't have the moderating experience of an upper class student to say, you really need to be focused here, there, and elsewhere. So our goal is to create the former, the really designed community where students perhaps might be co-enrolled in first-year experience courses or other general education courses that they may need. We're working very closely with Faye Howard in the Office for Student Academic Support. And our hope is to intentionally create the community such that students are benefiting to the best of our ability. It is going to be a self-selected community. There's only 200 spaces there. There's about 600 to 700 first-year students that would come in to residential housing. So not everybody will have the opportunity to live there, but my assumption is, we'll see how it plays out. It's always a sort of a guessing game. My assumption is that we'll have a good portion of students selecting that, other students selecting general mixed class housing, and still others selecting our living learning communities.
Can you tell me about the gender flexible housing option?
There was a proposal written last year. I would love to claim responsibility for being the initiator of this concept. It exists on a lot of college campuses. Edinboro is is not the first necessarily, but the program was, or the proposal was developed last year, and it's in response to the fact that we know that we want to offer students the ability to feel safe and accepted within their residential community. And for some students, that's about living with an individual whose maybe biological sex assignment is different than their roommate for a variety of, for a variety of reasons and needs that a person might have. It wasn't necessarily designed for students to sort of live with their boyfriend or girlfriend kind of an idea, though that can happen. That certainly can happen. First-year students are excluded from this with some exception. If a first-year student has their parents are willing to sign off saying that they can live in this type of environment and they have selected a roommate for whom they would like to live, or they need to have maybe a private living accommodation based on sexual identity or what have you, we will make every effort to house a student. It is a possibility, though, for upper class students to self-select into this. We do have a specialized agreement so that the students understand what they are getting themselves into with regard to when you have two individuals in one room sharing a suite, though, and everybody understands how that will be managed.
What are some problems you think that might arise from this?
Well, the reality is, you can look at it, and I think some of the things that people push back on and say are, what's going to happen when you have a dating couple living together and they break up, or there's a domestic violence situation. The reality is that's true. That can happen. That can happen equally, though, with two women roommates who are living together with two male roommates that are living together. It might not be in the context of a relationship, but it is in the context of a roommate dispute that has occurred. So you can look at it and say, this is going to present all these issues. Not necessarily. These are issues that are commonplace in a residential community, and you manage them as they come. Some of the advantages we have is when a student chooses to live with a roommate off campus, they've signed a lease. And if there's a conflict, they have to figure out how to manage through it. Here, certainly students are contractually obligated to live with us on campus, but if there's a roommate conflict, we can fix it if it's necessary.
Could you tell me about how you intend to include freshmen on online housing registration this year?
Well, it is going to be a new experience, both for me as a new person to Edinboro, as well as a new process for our first-year students. I mentioned before we began the interview that the online process has been in place for a year now for upper-class students. And last year, within days of the process beginning, they had more than 900 students who had participated. So it, with some minor glitches, my understanding is last year it went off without a hitch. I expect that we'll have some hiccups along the way with our process. It's, when you're automating something for the first time, for the first year or two, you're going to experience some difficulties. So we'll manage through them. Students, my finding with Edinboro students particularly is they can be incredibly understanding, and when you just own an issue and say, we've made a mistake or what have you, and address it, they're usually pretty forgiving. With the online process with first-year students, it is the first time we will be doing that. In the past, students would have to deposit with the institution, and they were able to do that electronically through the bursar's office, and then we would send them an online application and ask them to send us a $75 housing deposit fee that we would have to deposit along with their contract. And we had immense numbers of contracts. So now, once a student deposits online for the university saying, yes, I want to come, they are just one click away. It's on the same location on the website to say, I'd like to secure my housing deposit as well. They will also be sent additional information, though, alerting them to how they manage the process. Once a student deposits and says, yes, I'm coming, through the Office of Admissions, they're sent a rather expansive admissions booklet that kind of walks them through, this is how you get your account, these are the housing options that you have, this is how you register, this is your major, a lot of those things that the admissions office picks up. Once they receive that and they've deposited saying I'm coming to the institution, we'll send them a similar booklet that's all about the housing process. The students first go online and submit an online application, And in that, they're signing the housing agreement, saying that they understand the terms and whatnot, and they're answering a series of questions such as, I'd like to live in a quiet environment, I don't smoke, all of those things. And then a month or so later, we will send them an email saying it's now time for you to select your actual assignment. We have it as a two-step process because we want all of the students who are enrolling next year to have an equal shot at the type of housing that we have available. So we'll get as many as we can enrolled and ready to come to the institution and having paid their housing deposit, and then we'll ask them to secure their actual housing assignment, which will be probably around the first week in May. They'll be able to do that, and then they'll know exactly who their roommate is and where their assignment is, and hopefully it'll be a seamless process for them. And one of the things, if you ask any of the RAs, one of the things I talk to them about is, people, not just students, but people in general like to have control and feel like they're competent in what they're doing. If I know in advance, I can talk to my roommate, I can become more familiar, those types of things, that helps with a feeling of comfort prior to coming here. And that's half the battle with making your transition. And to feel in control of being able to say, I want to house myself in the STEM community because I am this major, or what have you. Really, it gives you a good start to know that this is your place and you're making decisions for yourself.
How do you think displaced students will be affected by these changes?
I think when you have any new program, the difficulty with the first year is it's something new and different. Once it becomes enculturated as we have this first year community, you have a wonderful experience living there your first year, and you know that the deal is that somebody else gets to benefit from that experience the following year. You begin to make those accommodations and you recognize that it's normative. I have no doubt, and it's a challenge for me because I want to make the largest breadth of students, excited about their housing assignments and feel really good about their choices. And when you tell an entire community that has established itself and the students know one another and adore their residence life staff members, that next year you need to live in a different community, I recognize that comes at some feeling of loss. I'm sure that there are students that would really want to come back if possible. My hope is that they'll align themselves into small groups and make some decisions to move wholesale into building 1, building 3, what have you. So it's a challenge, and I don't want to be dismissive of the experience of those students saying, wow, I wish I could return, because that's an unintended consequence to developing a program that in the end will benefit all students, but there's a short-term loss.
Could you just tell me about what other goals you have for the future of housing? What are your plans?
Well, ultimately, there's a lot of research out there that supports the notion that students who live on campus perform better, are more likely to stay at the institution, are more likely to graduate in a shorter period of time with a higher GPA and report far greater satisfaction with their college experience than those who commute or live off campus. That's not an accidental process, though. It needs to be one in which the residence life staff and the programs that are located in the halls are ones that support students' needs, academically especially. So I think that ultimately is our number one goal, is we want to help students to be successful and for them to recognize that the fee that they're paying to live on campus is worth the investment of their time. Because you hear a lot of students say, it's cheaper to live off campus. Financially, on the face of things, you might say that until you consider the unintended consequence or costs associated with living off campus. Your meals are not provided easily. You have to commute, meaning you have to dig yourself out before you ever even get to class. You divorce yourself from on-campus resources and have to come back to intentionally involve yourself in those. So those, you can't easily ascribe a dollar figure to that, but there is an impact. But students need to see what they're experiencing in the halls as a benefit to them. And ultimately, if we can create a community in which all of our students at the building level and at the floor level feel like they have individuals that they care about them, that want them to be successful in the institution, that are welcoming and affirming of who they are as individuals, then we've established a really strong community on campus. I do hope students consider what happens after their 4th semester requirement. It is easy to assume, and the culture, I think, supports 2 years and off. I don't think that has to be normative, though, and we have a number of students that stay through their junior year and through their senior year and really have had fantastic experiences. So I hope students really consider what the choices that they're making.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
The students now don't have the opportunity to participate in the first year program, but we do have one additional residential program that's coming online, and that's the Frederick Douglass Social Justice Community. And I want to put a special piece in there for that community because issues of social justice are near and dear to my heart. There's a lot in our world that is inherently unfair, and it's based in some systems that have been entrenched and are systematically excluding individuals from processes and systems and taking advantage of that which our country has to offer and which the world should partake in. And I really want students to think about the benefits of living in a community where they believe and are looking to make a difference.
Where did that idea originate?
The Frederick Douglass floor? Again, I'd love to take credit for it, but I can't. So the Frederick Douglass Initiative has been on campus for quite some time now, and Valerie Hayes, who has since left Edinboro, but at one point was our institutional equity officer, had developed a university committee associated with bringing the Frederick Douglass social justice emphasis to Edinboro. It's part of a PASHE initiative to really spur students to think about their role in the larger U.S. and global society. So out of those conversations and wanting to recognize the ideals of Frederick Douglass came the notion of the community.